Hello, Arden Elementary School in Courtenay, British Columbia. We're here to answer some of the questions you sent in to us, and thank you so much for them. So I'm going to start by answering Miss Sue's class's questions. So the first one is, what kind of garbage do you see the most of along Australian beaches? So the kind of garbage, to begin with, that we collect on our beaches doesn't just come from Australia. We have ocean currents that send rubbish to our beaches from all over the world, and I'm sure you guys experience that over in Canada as well. Some of the really common stuff we see is bottle caps, plastic bottles, plastic bags, and cigarette butts. They're really common debris, and you'll probably find that it's the case over there in Canada as well. Have you seen marine animals stuck or entangled in plastic? I have seen some animals, small animals, and also seen some birds with plastic stuck on their beaks and stuff. What about you?
Yeah, I've seen some turtles come in to the rehabilitation centre where we used to live at home, and they have eaten plastic before and got very sick. And I also have a friend who's saved an egret, I believe it was, who was tangled in some fishing line over in New Zealand, which isn't Australia, but very close.
The next question is, what marine animal do you think is at the greatest risk because of garbage and plastic? I don't really think that either of us could answer that question, other than to say that there isn't a single animal that isn't affected by marine debris in our oceans, although to highlight that some of the animals that are at the top of the food chain are more impacted by plastic because they're eating animals that have eaten plastic, that have eaten animals that have eaten plastic. Mm-hmm. So the chemical issues, because plastic has a lot of chemical in it, the impact on their health is magnified because those animals at the top of the food chain are eating animals that have also eaten plastic.
And we've also found tiny pieces of microplastic in zooplankton, which is and phytoplankton, which is smaller. Some of them smaller than the eye can see, and they still have plastic inside of them.
So our whole food chain, whole food chain is impacted by this. And if you ever eat seafood, then you're also eating plastic. That's what we know now. Have you ever directly helped a marine animal? Matilda was just talking about the work she did with the turtle rehab centre. Do you want to?
Yeah, so the turtles used to come in to the centre. Well, we'd take the turtles into the centre, and if they'd eaten plastic before, they can get pneumonia, they can get very sick, and they can also get floaters syndrome, which means that they can't dive down to the bottom to feed on the seagrass that they need to eat, so they get even more sick after that. So we'd take them into the centre, we'd scrub their backs, feed them food. Some of them stayed in there for a couple of years, and then we'd release them back into the wild when they were better. So,
and sometimes it does take that long for them to get better. It's not as simple as, one thing you do for that animal.
And picking up rubbish from the beach also directly helps animals.
Yeah. So the last question from Miss Sue's class is, what kind of marine garbage do you think is the biggest threat to wildlife? And plastic is definitely the answer. Plastic it lasts forever, it doesn't break down. It commonly looks like other animals in the ocean that would normally be eaten by other ocean animals, so animals mistake it for food. It's unnecessary to begin with, a lot of the single-use plastic we use, so we think that plastic is definitely the biggest threat to our wildlife.
And every single piece of plastic that has ever been made on the planet still exists here, so it doesn't ever go away, which is pretty scary to think about.
So Matilda's going to answer some of the questions from Mrs. Smith's class now.
So, grade 2. So, great questions, by the way. What is it like to travel the way you are? So, I'm guessing that's relating to plastic-free, but also kayaking. So we've both been living plastic free. So traveling plastic free means that you have to carry a bag with some things in it. Some of those things are reusable water bottles, cutlery. I take a container so that when I eat out, I can put the food into the container rather than using plastic takeaway containers. And the bag is useful for me to go shopping, but I also have to be very organized and make a lot of my meals. What's it like to travel by kayaking? Lots of fun. You get to visit some very beautiful places, and because the kayak is silent, you can sneak up and get a very close look at some beautiful animals. We've seen dolphins, turtles. Haven't seen any whales yet, but we will in Alaska and Canada.
Stingrays, manta rays, fish, all of the starfish, so many beautiful animals.
Yeah, and it feels pretty good as well, because you know that when you've paddled for 6 hours, you know that you've gotten there to that magical campsite, all with the power of your own arms. So pretty cool. How tired are you at the end of each day? So that depends a lot on the weather. Sometimes you can have a very calm day, no winds, and you can just be paddling like la 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 la, and you get to camp and you feel great and you eat some food. And sometimes you might be paddling against the tide or against the wind or both. In that case, you get very tired, not just at the end of the day, but sometimes halfway through the day or a quarter through the day, and you have to keep on going. So it depends a lot on the weather and on your technique. If you have good technique, then it shouldn't hurt in your shoulders and your arms. It should just be spread evenly throughout your body and mostly in your core. So how many beaches have you already cleaned up? It's a good question. So we've both done quite a few, maybe 10 organised beach cleanups with other volunteers, where we go all around Australia, some different islands off the coast of Australia, and we do a cleanup. Sometimes it's for a couple of hours. I've done one that lasted a whole week where we cleaned up every single day. But both of us clean up rubbish whenever we go for a walk. So if we walk dogs on the beach, we'll take a bag and pick up rubbish. So
when we go kayaking, we pick up rubbish.
That's right. So we've probably cleaned up a lot of beaches by now. Where do you sleep? So on our trip, we'll be sleeping not in our boats. Lots of people think we're sleeping in our kayaks. That wouldn't be very fun. So we're sleeping in a tent. It's a 3-person tent for the 2 of us, so it fits our camping things as well, our bags. And we're also taking a hammock each. So where we can, we're going to sleep in our hammocks, which is a lot more comfortable and a lot more fun. What do you eat along the way? So we are going to do this trip for 3 months, single-use plastic free. So think of all of the food that you might take camping that normally comes wrapped in plastic. We're not allowed to do that. We're not going to do that. So before the trip, we're going to cook all of our food, and then we're going to use dehydrating machines to take all of the moisture out of it. So a meal that might be this big shrinks down to a tiny meal this big, and then we're going to wrap that in newspaper and put it in dry bags to keep all of our food dry. And that way we're not using any plastic at all. So it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, and yeah.
Thanks. Okay, last class, which is Mr. Lamont's class and Mrs. Grant's class. 3 more questions. Thank you very much. Why did you choose Vancouver Island as an area for your adventure? So we're not just paddling around Vancouver Island, we're actually starting in Juneau in Alaska and paddling all the way to Vancouver Island. When I was 19, I went to Vancouver, and I went to Vancouver Island, and I remember seeing the area there and thinking how beautiful it was. I saw orcas as we crossed from Vancouver over to the island. It was just an incredible place, and I remember thinking, one day I'm going to come back here and I'm going to kayak through those islands. And that was 10 years ago, so I'm pretty excited to be finally fulfilling that dream and to be doing it with one of my very good friends. Yay! So that's why we chose it. Also because we wanted to talk about how oceans are global and we're connected, and it's everyone's responsibility. So it was important to be going to another place that wasn't Australia. Where will you stay along the way? we are going to be stopping on islands and on the coastline. Sometimes we will be in campsites that are already set up and have amenities. Sometimes we might even be in a cabin. But the most of the time, like 90% of the time, we'll be camping on places we've found other kayakers have camped before, or just going on Google Earth and finding what we think might be a beach. So it's going to be a learning experience, and one of the many things we have to deal with on a daily basis is making sure we find a good camp. So we'll be looking on the islands and mainland around where we're paddling.
And hopefully there's no bears that have gone there before us. If there are, then we'll have to keep on paddling to the next island.
Why did you choose to travel by kayaks? We both love kayaking. It allows us to be on the ocean, and we want to do it under our own power. So unlike sailing, we have to use our own strength to do it, and I think it was really important for us to not be using any kind of man-made power like fuel motored engines or all of that kind of stuff, because we want to be with nature and at one with nature and be quiet and be amongst it. So we decided to do it by sea kayaks because we love the ocean, we love kayaking, and we want to be totally immersed.
It also gives you a lot of freedom, so if you want to go exploring down a channel that's only this deep, you can in a kayak, so you can go into all the different coves and rivers and things like that. So
Thanks so much for your questions, everyone. We're really excited to share our journey with you, and every single one of you means something to us and are inspiring us to keep going.
Thank you. Bye.